Ready for a challenge? Today, we're taking on James Joyce's Ulysses.
Yeah, that book, the one everyone says is so difficult.
It definitely has that reputation, a real Everest of a novel, some might say. But I think you'll find the journey is worth it.
That's the spirit. We're here to navigate the ins and outs of Ulysses, published back in 1922, and its unforgettable setting, Dublin, on June 16th, 1904.
And now June 16th is basically its own literary holiday, right? Bloomsday. People retrace Leopold Bloom's steps all through the city.
I love that. It's like walking straight into the story. Now, Ulysses has this really unique structure divided into 18 episodes that kind of mirror the Odyssey.
Joyce was brilliant with that. He wasn't just drawing parallels. They're woven right into the story. We meet Leopold Bloom, our modern-day Odysseus, who's not fighting mythical creatures. He's a Jewish advertising canvasser in Dublin. Hey, sometimes dealing with a tough client feels like battling a cyclops, am I right?
Exactly. And then there's Stephen Dedalus, the Telemachus character, a young writer full of ambition, but also struggling with, well, life.
We actually met him before in A Portrait of the Artist, right?
You got it. It's like Joyce wants us to see how his characters grow up across his different books. And of course, there's Molly Bloom, Leopold's wife. She's Penelope. But so much more complex and so real, especially in that amazing last chapter, all told from her point of view.
That's one of the things Ulysses is famous for, that stream of consciousness style. It's like we're inside her head.
It's an incredible technique, and Joyce absolutely changed the game with how he used it.
That stream of consciousness, though, I'll be honest, when I first read Ulysses, it took me a minute to wrap my head around it.
It's definitely a different kind of reading experience.
It's like suddenly you're not just reading the story, you're like inside of it.
You're right there in the moment with the characters and their thoughts. Exactly.
Like in Proteus. We're walking with Stephen on the beach, and it's all jumbled up together, his thoughts, the things he sees, even snippets of what other people are saying.
It's such a fascinating way to capture how our minds really work, right?
Totally. I remember this one part where Stephen's thinking about Aristotle one second and then, well, let's just say less intellectual things the next. It's kind of hilarious, actually.
It's Joyce at his best, capturing those random leaps our brains make.
And he's doing it while playing with language in all these inventive ways, too. Puns, allusions, you name it.
It's like he's leaving little puzzles for the reader to uncover all over the place.
It's true. Did you have a favorite aha moment when you were reading Ulysses? Some little detail that blew your mind.
Oh, there's so many. But, okay, this one comes to mind. It's from the Aeolus episode where they're in the newspaper office. There's a line that says, thumping typewriters, click, click, click.
Okay, I kind of remember that part.
So obviously the click, click, click is just, the sound of the typewriters.
Yeah.
But click is also slang for to understand or to make a connection.
Whoa. I never even thought about it like that.
And that episode is all about communication, how we create meaning. So it's like this hidden layer of meaning that ties back to the whole theme.
It's amazing how much deeper those little details make the story.
It's what makes reading Ulysses so rewarding. But of course, it's not just about the wordplay and the style. Joyce is grappling with some really big, important themes in this book.
Absolutely. Like anti-Semitism. It's a major undercurrent throughout Ulysses.
It's central to Bloom's character and how he experiences the world.
Yeah, like in Cyclops, in that pub. It's uncomfortable to read because it's so real and so awful.
That scene is so powerful because it forces us to confront the casual bigotry that Bloom faces just for being Jewish.
And Joyce wasn't Jewish himself, right?
Exactly. He chose to write the story from a Jewish character's perspective, which makes it even more significant.
It's like he's using Bloom to hold up a mirror to the prejudices of that time. And really, they're not so different from the prejudices that still exist today.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just about anti-Semitism either. There's this whole other layer of Irish nationalism that runs through Ulysses.
Which makes sense, right? It's 1904, Ireland's under British rule. It's a tense time.
Exactly. And Joyce captures those tensions, that struggle for identity, really subtly. It's in the characters' conversations, their worries about the future, even the way they talk about Dublin.
So even though the whole book takes place on just one ordinary day, we're getting this whole sense of history and politics swirling around it.
It's what makes Ulysses feel so alive and so real. It's like we're dropped right into Dublin in 1904, experiencing it all alongside the characters.
And speaking of experiencing things, we have to talk about how Joyce handles human sexuality in Ulysses. He was really ahead of his time, and not everyone was happy about it.
Yeah, it's one thing to, talk about the human experience, but he really pushed boundaries with how he dealt with sexuality, especially for the early 1900s.
Oh, for sure, and it caused quite a stir. Ulysses was actually banned in several countries for being too explicit. Can you believe that? It was considered too scandalous for over a decade.
It's wild to think about that now, right? It's considered a classic, a masterpiece. Thank goodness those bans didn't stick. It's a good thing they didn't, because it opened the door for other writers to experiment and break free from the old rules.
It really did. Like Ezra Pound and T.S. Eliot, those are some heavy hitters in the literature world, and they were huge supporters of Ulysses right from the beginning.
Exactly. And we can't forget about Sylvia Buch. She's the one who actually published Ulysses when no one else would touch it.
She was a true trailblazer, taking a huge risk on a book that many found shocking at the time.
She took a chance on Joyce's vision, and it changed literature forever.
It's amazing to think about the impact one book can have, sparking all these discussions and debates that are still going on today.
It really makes you think, why does Ulysses still resonate with us after all this time?
That's a good question. I mean, on the surface, it's about a bunch of people going about their day in Dublin over 100 years ago. Not exactly something you'd think would be relevant to our lives today.
It's funny how that works. Because even though the setting and the time period are specific, the themes that Joyce is exploring are universal. Things like finding your place in the world, dealing with relationships, searching for meaning in everyday life. Those are things we can all relate to.
You're right, those are timeless struggles.
Exactly. And whether you see yourself in Stephen, the young artist trying to find his voice, or in Leopold, who's navigating the ups and downs of adulthood, there's something in Ulysses that speaks to everyone on a personal level.
It reminds us that even though times change, people, at their core, they stay the same.
And that's what makes Ulysses so powerful. It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you think, it challenges you.
And you might need to read it a few times to really grasp everything Joyce is doing, but it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. It's like our deep dive today. We've only just scratched the surface of what Ulysses has to offer.
It's a good reminder that some books, some stories, they have so much depth that you can keep coming back to them and always find something new. It makes you wonder, what would our own personal Ulysses look like? If we were to write down every thought, every feeling, every little detail of our day, what kind of story would we tell?